A very good evening to all. It's time for children's bedtime treasury with Let Emotions Speak. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe to my channel for more amazing stories each night. Today's story is about Mr. Mole Gets Lost. Mr. Mole poked his little black nose out from the top of one of his mole hills and had a great big sniff of the air. Then he sniffed again and then a third time just to make sure. Oh dear, he thought, it smells like it's going to rain. Mr. Mole didn't like the rain one bit. Every time he got caught in the rain, his plush little velvet fur coat got all wet and drippy, and he left muddy footprints all over his underground burrow. But worse still, the rain got in through the holes in his molehills, and then everything got all soggy and took days to dry out. Well, the skies got darker and darker, and very soon little spots of rain began to fall. Then the spots became bigger, and then bigger still. Before long, all you could see before your eyes were big straight rods of rain bouncing off the leaves on the trees, pounding the ground and turning everything muddy and wet. Mr. Mole had never seen rain like it. He sat in his burrow in the middle of the meadow, wishing it would stop. But it just kept raining and raining. Soon the rain started entering his burrow. First it went drip, drip, drip through the holes in his molehills, and then it became a little river of water in the bottom of his burrow. Then the little river became a bigger, faster flowing river, and suddenly Mr. Mole was being washed along by it. Through the tunnels of his burrow he went, this way and then that, as the water gushed and poured through his underground home. The next thing he knew, he was being washed out of his burrow completely as the rainwater carried him off down the meadow. Down he went, not knowing which way he was or where he was going. Now he was being washed through the woods at the bottom of the meadow, but still the water carried him on, bouncing and turning him until he was dizzy and gasping for breath. Suddenly he came to a halt. The rain water gurgled and trickled around him and then flowed onwards as he found himself stuck firmly in the branches of a bush. Oh dear, Mr. Mole said as he got himself free. Goodness me, where can I be? He thought. Mr. Mole looked around him, but being a very short-sighted mole, as most moles are, he could make out any of the places that were familiar to him. Worse still, he couldn't smell any smells that were familiar to him. He was completely lost, far from home, and had no idea how to get back again. Now, to make things worse, it was starting to get dark. "Ooh," said a voice suddenly. Mr. Mole nearly jumped out of his moleskin with fright. "I won't stay here if I were you," said the voice again. Mr. Mole looked up and found himself face to face with an enormous owl. "Don't you know it's not safe in the woods at night?" asked the owl. "There are snakes and foxes and weasels and all sort of nasty creatures that you really wouldn't like to meet." "Oh dear," was all Mr. Mole could think of saying. He told the owl of his terrible water journey and how he was lost and didn't know how to get back home again. "You need to talk to Polly Pigeon," said the owl. "She is a homing pigeon and she lives near your meadow. She can show you the way home, but we'll have to find her first. Stay close to me, mind, and look out for those snakes, foxes, and weasels I told you about." Mr. Mole didn't need telling twice. He He stayed so close to the kindly owl that every time the owl stopped or turned round to talk to Mr. Mole bumped right into him. Through the dark, dangerous woods they went. Every now and again there would be an unfriendly noise, such as a deep growl or a hiss coming from the dense, tangled trees. But Mr. Mole didn't want to think about that too much. So he just made sure that he never lost sight of the owl. Finally, just when Mr. Mole thought he couldn't go to a step further, they came to a halt by an old elm tree. "Hello!" called the owl. They were in luck. Polly Pigeon was waking up and they found her just in time, for she was about to continue her journey home. "Please," said Mr. Mole, "I'm afraid I'm terribly lost and don't know how to get back to my meadow. Will you take me there?" "Of course I will," said Polly Pigeon. "We'd better let you rest here a while first, though. But we must go before it gets light." So Mr. Mole was soon trudging wearily back to his meadow, following as closely behind Polly Pigeon as he was able. Just as the first rays of sun lit the morning sky, Mr. Mole smelled a very familiar smell. It was his meadow. He was almost home. Soon he was back in his own burrow. It was so wet and muddy, however, that the first thing he did was build new tunnels higher up the meadow so that the rain wouldn't wash him down so easily into the mud. Then he settled down to eat one of his supplies of worms and fell into deep sleep. Well-earned slumber. So kids, did you enjoy this story? Let me know in the comments below. So that you don't ever get lost, always memorize your parents' name, their phone numbers, your house address, your business address, so that you can be easily found. It's time to say goodbye and good night.